Okay, so we're good. All right, I'm going to call the meeting to order at 7:03 p.m. Ms. Bell, can I get a roll call?
Yes, ma'am. Good evening, everyone. Trustee Ochapente?
Here.
Trustee Lee?
Here.
Trustee Ian Garrett?
Present.
Trustee Tejada?
Here.
President Salahuddin?
Here. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And then we have our student trustees, Trustee Abuzarea, Trustee Murphy,
Here.
and Madeline Miss Her.
Here.
Thank you. All right, moving on to the approval of the agenda. Ms. Presta, are there any changes or additions to the agenda?
There are no changes.
Awesome, thank you. Can I get a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Fantastic, thank you. Moving on to board report. Turning it over to our student trustees first. Trustee Her.
Hi, good evening. So at Oceana, some students have said that they're really concerned about their grades. And because the classes are so much shorter, it seems so much faster to the end of the semester. And they feel like they haven't gotten a lot of opportunities to make up for their grades. And tests are taking up so much of their grade that they feel like the homework and classwork isn't really supporting it. I think I mentioned this in the last meeting, but Oceana might be changing the current master schedule. Some students felt like they needed a longer break or a nutrition break because they don't have, they don't have the opportunity to eat. Or they don't have time to prepare a meal for themselves because their parents are at work. Many students are feeling really drained from all the work. They feel like even after online classes, they have to stay on their computer to do extra work, which can get really tiring. It seems like a lot of students are turning their cameras off and participation is decreasing since the beginning of school. And even though everything's really difficult right now, many students have found ways to connect with each other. For example, the Ocean Conservation Club started to do weekly beach cleanups where they could socially distance and talk to each other while cleaning the beaches. And ASB has started podcasts on Spotify, hosted game nights, and created challenges and videos, which have gotten a few students engaged. And that is all I have for today. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Abuzarea.
So not much to report since we're coming back from Thanksgiving break, but at Westmore, the Friday before break, we had our last Westmore sneak peek, which is for prospective ninth graders. So like that would be eighth graders to like learn more about Westmore. And we have, so on the panel, we had a few students from student government, and then some vice principals were there, and Miss Strickland was there, I believe, our principal. And we also had our student activities director, Mr. Simon, was also there. And like it was an opportunity for the eighth graders to ask questions about Westmore and just to like see if it would be a good school for them. And I mean, they were kind of shy though, and like, you know, sometimes they'd use the chat feature, but you know, you didn't necessarily get a lot of questions. A lot of the time we'd kind of just be like giving a general overview of like, you know, like A to G requirements or like what clubs Westmore has and things like that. Other than that, well, we currently have a plan to start a homework club or a homework center. This was a thing back when we were in person. I would believe it was after school. I'm not sure how many days a week, but it was like 3:15 to 4:15. So the plan is to have like a sort of soft launch next week, just to like gauge what students need from the homework center so it's effective. And so it's not just something that's there, but like not, you know, that doesn't really help students. So there's also a survey that's going to be sent out to students to see like what type of help they need and all that. And so we are trying to make sure that students get the help they need.
Thank you. Trustee Murphy?
Yeah, thank you. Not a whole lot to report either. I guess, one thing I wanted to mention was I know the district had invested in a tutoring program paper for all the students to use. And we started using it in our English classes to get revisions on our essays. And I know my English teacher says she's had students use it throughout all of her classes, and she's very happy with it. I'm happy with it so far. So I think that that's been a success thus far, although it's still reasonably new. But I think that was a good decision for the board and the district to make. So I think that's about all I wanted to mention there.
Thank you. Trustee Ochapinti?
Yeah, so one, it's good to hear from the student trustees about their experiences right now. I think at this point in the semester, we would have had a lot of ideas about how distance learning was going to go in the spring and of course early in the fall. And as we go into winter and close out the semester, it's good to know what's working, what's not. I think what we're doing is work in progress all over, and just to note that what we're seeing in terms of, surges in numbers and positivity in terms of COVID, looking at, what's happening across the nation in New York and how they're beginning to respond to it, how our counties responding differently than other counties in the Bay Area. It's good to understand what's working, I think, in terms of delivering education, and of course, doing that in the spirit of best practices in health and safety for our students. So thank you for sharing that to our student trustees, first of all. The second thing being that with the surge in cases, just to remind people, of course, with the malls opening and more people coming to San Mateo County, people in our communities, in our district may be at more risk, including our students who are working. So just thinking about that in terms of factoring that into, how students are being graded and how they're being supported means a lot. So I'll be interested to see how that's working for the last 3 weeks of the semester. On my end, I guess one of the things I have to report is it's good to see some students getting out there and doing some support. It can be, I guess, it takes a lot of energy and I guess time away from things. But during the week off, some of our students were doing outreach in the community. So supporting with COVID safety relief in terms of supplies and resources. Some of our students here in Daly City, including and actually led by some of our students at Shasta, the Black Student Union. I'm very proud to see them out there doing that. And even some students from the South City Unified to get out there and collaborate with that. It was really positive to see that, that collaboration, and including some ongoing outreach they're doing in support of people being affected by the hurricanes in Central America and a typhoon, of course, in the Philippines. And so doing that work here locally and globally, to have that lens to understand how climate change, of course, is part of everything, but especially right now, as the world is hard hit with this pandemic, how it's important to come together and encourage public agencies and, of course, share those resources, even if we're getting them together ourselves. And see youth-led initiatives like that means a lot. It should be inspiring to show us how we can maybe mobilize more around that outside of our public agencies as well. That said, I attended the CSBA board president's workshop today. It was very informative and good to see some of the practices that we're doing that stem from that training, and of course, masters in governance and additional training. But that said, we have more to look forward to this week with CSBA's annual education conference, and I'll leave it there.
Thank you. Trustee Lee, can you hear me?
Yeah, you cut yourself off when you said the last name. Not a whole lot either, although, thinking back, it was good to have our equity retreat right at the start of the Thanksgiving break. It's a really good reminder, again, for us to continue to look at our meetings through that lens and how we can inform, how we can continue to grow as individuals with that lens, and how we can apply it to our work as a board and as a governance team, and how it filters on down through the rest of the district. So grateful for the morning and / early afternoon that we were able to spend discussing it and continuing to learn and grow. I'll often, when I'm out and about running a couple of errands, I'll swing by the district office site just to see the status of construction of the faculty and staff housing project. And it's pretty fun to see a building actually coming out of the ground now, to see the framing. And it's pretty exciting to see that this dream is starting to take shape. And, nerding out a little bit. If you look down, you can see and lastly, I'm grateful that we are doing, that the district office is hosting COVID testing. With some misadventures with my own kids last week, trying to get tested, and my daughter driving down from Sacramento to Daly City just to get tested. And it just goes to show that even though testing has grown, it's still very hard to find and hard to book an appointment, and to do on demand is tough. So grateful that we at least have a space where certainly a lot of people can go on a daily basis, Monday through Friday. So good work, and I'll pass on to the next individual.
Thank you. Trustee Ian Garrett.
I guess I will just piggyback on what Trustee Lee said, that I'm really grateful that we do have a lot of COVID testing facilities in our community. So, the more we get tested, the better we are, protecting ourselves. So I hope everyone is out there being safe and healthy, which is the main priority. And I hope that everyone had a great Thanksgiving last week. I don't remember mentioning anything about being grateful for last week, but I just want to say that I'm grateful for each and every one of you all here and in our community that does this work to really make the school district better for all our students. And I really appreciate all the feedback that the student trustees give, whether it's positive or negative, and that's how we're always going to be able to move forward and improve and change things. So I really just want to say I'm grateful for that. So thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Tejada.
Hi, so I had the Student Advisory Council meeting last night, and Superintendent Presta and Ms. Salahuddin attended as well. And it's always, we went 2 hours, and it very lively, thoughtful discussion going through a lot of the presentation that we're going through tonight. And it was great to hear from them as usual. So I started my Thanksgiving morning finding out that I was a close contact of someone who tested positive for COVID. So, they tell you to contact your healthcare provider. It's Thanksgiving. The office is closed. You don't ever want to hear that, because I'm extra careful. Thankfully, I had not been around my father since, I was exposed. And I was scrambling, trying to find COVID testing. And I decided, well, I need to put a turkey in the oven. So I'm just going to let this, I'm probably fine, but you don't ever want to hear that. And that's the thing, is that, you could be as careful as you can be and follow all the rules. And within 15 minutes, you could be exposed to someone without even knowing it. But we found, my kids and I went to the testing site at Bayshore Elementary on Saturday, and we have tested negative, but I'm still adhering to the protocol to stay quarantined until Thursday. But it's an eye-opener, then I think about our teachers and our students. Because where I was exposed, it was a very small number of people in that place. So you just don't know. But I'm grateful, that we do have some resources here, and the system worked, So let's see if they're really doing any contact tracing here, hopefully. Of course, we'll never know, because San Mateo doesn't share anything with us.
Thank you. So for me, it was a really busy week. I had a lot of meetings. But again, the student advisory meeting is always a highlight. And it was a great discussion. I had a lot of meetings over the break with Supervisor Canepa, Assembly Member Ting, and County Supervisor Mike Callaghy about the testing site that's at the district office. So I'm glad that we were able to get that 5 days a week. So hopefully that'll take a little pressure off of the Jefferson High School site. So far it's looking like it hasn't, but I'm hoping like in the upcoming weeks that it will. But I do just want to stress to folks, I am very concerned about the increase in infection rate, especially in our area. It's hard to tell. I know it's in our area just because I've been told, because I constantly pester the county office. So I've been told that Daly City is a hot spot, but unless they tell me these things, I don't know. So that's the part that's challenging for me, is that I feel like there's a lot of information that's held in the bubble, and the general public doesn't really understand the danger that is out there and the increase that's happening, especially going into the holiday season. A lot of people traveled over Thanksgiving. A lot of people traveled. And so even if you are someone who, say you're an essential worker and you stayed home and you did everything right when you go to work, and you're now exposed to people who traveled, it's a persistent problem which is amplified here in our area. And so I'm just really concerned for our community, and I want us all to get through this safely. So I'm just imploring people to please, I know I'm exhausted. You know, we're all just exhausted by all the rules and restrictions, but to try to be extra careful during this holiday season. And if you can stay inside, stay inside. If you have to go outside, please wear a mask. Try to keep distance from people, and adhere to all the rules and protocols. And I know, again, it's exhausting and it's challenging, and we all wish this was over. But I want all of us to get to the end of this. So it's about, let's truly being a community, and it's more about what I need and what we all need collectively. I will also say that, now that we have the testing here, to take advantage of it, even if the appointments are full at the JUHSD district office site or at the Jefferson High School site, you can still come and walk up and get tested. Testing is happening Tuesday through Saturday this week at the district office from 10 o'clock to 4, and on Wednesday and Friday at Jefferson High School from 2 o'clock to 6. So especially if you travel over the holiday, please come and get tested, so that if you know your status is much more important. I know it's scary to find out whether you have it, and some people say, I'd rather not know. But again, it's about us as a collective community, and you may give it to someone else. So know your status. The sooner you know, the sooner you can go get assistance, and we can keep each other safe. So with that, I'll turn it over to Ms. Presta.
Thank you. So I just want to say, I want to thank everyone and express my hope that people got some rest last week. I want to thank the executive cabinet, Ms. Van Raphorst and Ms. Baca and Ms. Basuino, along with Mr. Meyer, Jake Meyer, and Tim Cummings, who we had and Mr. Meyer is going to give an update later, so I won't go into great detail, but essentially we had our email server lost all of our emails. So we spent the first 3 days of last week working on that. And, I would kind of joked it was baptism by fire. I was taking on my new role, and then all of a sudden the server, we don't use the word crashed, but, kind of went crazy. So I was and am just so grateful for the great team that we've got, because there was just no question. Everybody was there like, okay, what do we need to do? Fixing it and taking care of the rest of the district. So thank you. So I was quite grateful for them. Many of the things that were already mentioned, there's a lot going on. I really enjoyed being at the student advisory committee last night meeting, because it just was such a great discussion. And I'm proud that we give students a voice in our district. And I really look forward to being with them this year. I want to mention a couple of things today. So as you know, San Mateo County returned to the purple tier on the 28th of November. And because of that, County Superintendent Nancy McGee called sort of an impromptu meeting this afternoon for the school superintendents. One of the things, so talking about what that means, I want to assure you that for our discussion later on the agenda about return to school, that this movement to the purple tier does not affect any plans that we're talking about. We would be able to still call in small groups if we decide to. What we talked a lot about was the fact that the governor may indeed decide to give another shelter in place, stay at home order. And if that happens, we're hoping that the governor gives some thoughtful and precise guidance to school districts, because without that precise guidance, we're sort of left, school district by school district to making these decisions when we don't always have all of the information that we need. If the governor doesn't give us that very precise guidance, then we are hoping that the county will, Dr. Morrow or the county health. So we're waiting and seeing. And if we are, if the stay-at-home order does come, we will do what we need to do. I also wanted to share with you that CIF released a statement today, essentially saying that, due to the continued surge in COVID-19 infections, the California Department of Public Health has postponed the issuance of its updated youth sports guidance. And so CIF does not expect any guidance to come out anytime soon. So they are putting everything on hold, essentially. I'm reading my notes. They don't expect anything to come out issuing any guidance allowing for schools to return to full practice and competition until after January 1st. And so everything is officially on hold. And they also said that they're removing all regional and state championship events from the season 1 sports calendar. So I thought I would just give you that update that essentially because of this surge, they're not really giving any guidance. Other than that, happy to have a few days off for Thanksgiving, and happy to be back with all of you. Thank you.
Thank you. Turning it over to our AFT 1481 president, Ms. Casey.
Hello, thank you. I only have a few things today. So number one is thank you to the tech department, hopping to it. And I really appreciate everything you've all done through this, through our break. I don't know if that was lucky or not lucky. It was lucky for us, unlucky for you. And I hope you get some rest soon. I want to remind everybody that although we're calling it distance learning, we are still in crisis learning. It's not just distance learning. We're still in a crisis. Our kids are seeing crisis mode. Our staff is in crisis mode, and our country is in crisis mode, as is the world. So we need to come at any decisions we make, from that standpoint right now. And again, we have some opportunities to change things. So I just want to keep reiterating that, because the way things were before COVID were not necessarily the best. And although we all like to think back on how it was, how wonderful it was, there were some things that need to be changed. So if we can do that now, that'd be great. And then the last thing I wanted to say is, you know, I'm in a lot of meetings, as we all are. All the people here are in a lot of meetings. But one of the things I did want to mention is I noticed that there aren't always a lot of students in the meetings. And there's a few, and I love having students at our meetings, but that's a small number. And a lot of times you'll see the same names over and over again. You know, the same people, the same few people. And so I just want us to kind of put that in our heads and think, well, how can we get more students involved, and maybe having our meetings at different times and having them count for some kind of class credit, some way to get more student voice, especially in a high school district, I think would be really important. But we also have to make it easy for them, or easier for them. That's all I have for today. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to consent agenda, unless anyone has anything they would like to pull, can I get a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Great. Moving on. I do not believe we have any blue cards for public comment. Checking to make sure that's correct.
Yes, that is correct.
Awesome. Moving on to item 8, discussion items. First item is item 8A, Information and Technology Department, an update on our district server and email. And I'm turning that over to, I believe, Mr. Meyer first.
Yes, correct. Good evening, President Salahuddin, members of the board, and student trustees. I'm here tonight to give you an update on what happened to our mail server. I think it's important to communicate what steps we took and the amount of work that went into it. I apologize if it sounds like I'm reading, because I had to write it all out, so I am reading. On November 21st, approximately 2:00 p.m., I received text message that our Outlook email was not working. I verified there was an issue and contacted Tim Cummings, our systems engineer. It was discovered that while the server was still on and responding, the mail store database was not mounted. This database is what houses all email, contacts, and calendars. Without a database mounted, the email server will not show any data, nor will it accept any new emails. After a reboot, the server indicated that the database was shut down in what they call a dirty state, and that the exchange repair utilities should be run to get to a clean state. Our exchange server database had grown to be very large over the last 7 years in production. The size of the database resulted in the repair process taking hours to complete. The first attempt at repair failed, so another more aggressive option of the repair utility was run, which also did not repair the database. At that point, Saturday night, we reached out to outside experts for help, who were also unable to offer any resolution. So Sunday morning, Tim Cummings, our systems engineer, started restoring from backup, which also took hours to complete, and discovered the same issue with the database in an unmounted state. All attempts to restore from older backups ended with the same result. It is our belief that the mail server was functioning with an unstable database for weeks, possibly months, without any indication of a problem. We later discovered a hardware failure in our virtual server environment, which may have caused the initial issue on Saturday, the 21st. We were not notified of the hardware failure, as the notifications are sent out via Outlook email. Late Sunday night, it was decided to get the mail server functioning with a fresh database so mail would begin to flow again. Most mail servers have a limit on how long they will try to resend failed email deliveries, and if we waited any longer, we would start losing new emails. On Monday, November 23rd, Tim found a tool that would allow us to see the data inside the unmountable database, as well as perform restores of email and calendars on a one-by-one basis. Tim started restoring data and continues this work around the clock as I speak. And it's a very slow process. So he actually got creative and copied the database 4 times and has 4 instances of restores going. but it's still just a lot slower than we would really like it to be. So our plan was initially to move away from Exchange and Outlook over this, this summer, transitioning to Google. This unfortunate incident has accelerated the need to migrate away from Exchange. Over the winter break, all new JUHSD Outlook email will be transitioned to Google. The migration will transfer existing email and calendars without any action required by staff. Older JUHSD.net email is accessible now using our email archiver, which contains many years of historical email. Instructions on access and use have been communicated to staff at both JUHSD.net and JeffersonUnion.net email addresses. We're working on a memo that will be sent out this week outlining our transition plan, timeline, what will be changing, as well as what will and what will not be available after the transition. Training on the use of Google email and calendar will be provided to any staff members in need. And at this point, I would like to thank Tim Cummings for his tireless effort and never giving up on finding a solution. And I would also just like to give a shout out to our entire IT department for their dedication and top-notch support that they continue to provide. The district is so fortunate to have such a dedicated team. That's it.
Thank you. Letting you receive your round of applause. And so I'm opening it up to any comments or questions. Ms. Garrett?
I just want to say that I am really impressed and grateful for all, especially when it was supposed to be a slow time. You guys had a stressful time. So I am really sorry for that. But thank you for getting all our emails back in order. Really appreciate you. And I would probably be crying if that happened to me. So thank you for taking care of it. Immensely appreciative of it. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I also just want to thank what a stellar team we have. I work in the private sector and we usually have a huge IT department and but I immediately thought I don't folder anything and I refer to a lot of stuff. I'm always searching for things and I know I'll find it because I rarely delete anything, especially things I know I'm going to refer to later. And boy, I know, well, I think we're going to be able to retrieve things as far back as 2011, I think. So, but I just want to thank you guys. Thank you all for the immense amount of work that you're doing, taking care of us.
Thank you. Anyone else? Mr. Occhipinti?
Yeah, big shout out to our entire IT department. I noticed, I think, when you're going through your email and you're not seeing certain things, and some of those things have me wondering if, it wasn't my Wi-Fi sometimes, but I realized that I think over time we knew that our system needed some kind of upgrade. And I know there was some discussion about that, but you can't predict these things. And so I just want to say, while it is troubling to know that this happened, it is relieving to know that we now know why. And for a district like ours that does work on a shoestring budget on many things, including things around a district office, including, most importantly, I think, like we're trying to do to pay our staff and all of our staff, a living wage, and you up there that, it's hard to take care of these kind of things. So not take it too hard on ourselves when literally the hardware breaks down in our offices. These are the states that we live and work in, and we work through them. So again, to just echo what everybody's saying, and Coach Jake, the hard work, and everybody in the department and around the district, and to ask the patients too for our district to work through it as well. And I look forward to how we're gonna move forward with Gmail and whatever else we use for our district. So thank you.
Mr. Lee?
Yeah, it's again, just thank you, Jake, to you and your team. This is IT can be such a thankless and lonely job as well, and you're behind the scenes and you take unnecessary heat sometimes, and you don't get the glory, but thank you. This has been your time to shine, you and your team. And so thank you so much. It's tough stuff, and I know it's thankless, but thank you.
Thank you. And I will just add that administrative support jobs are really hard because no one notices us until something goes wrong, right? People don't notice all the things that you're working and doing correctly. It's only when things don't go the way they're supposed to go that everybody instantly knows who you are. So, but what I like is that, you know, you've always shown us who you are, Jake, with all the work that you've done. You show up, and the only reason I'm talking about it now is just because I feel like everyone needs to know this. Like, weekends, Jake is on our Zoom calls. Like, he has as many meetings as, unfortunately, he's in as many meetings as we are because of Zoom. So he has to come and set them up. So if we're meeting on Saturdays, if we're meeting at night, if we're meeting in the day, Jake is always there on top of all the other IT stuff that he has to do. This year has been incredible for IT staff who are paid what they're worth, because we all rely on email so much more. I mean, so we had a similar issue happen at my job where, you know, God knows how much money that you're spending on their servers, and our server also went down and we lost our email for 2.5 days just because so much is being done via email, and at home, we're just crashing servers left and right. So we're not unique in this issue. I'm surprised that we actually have lasted this long with the budget that we're putting into our IT equipment and the support around our IT equipment. So you guys work miracles every single day. And we're entirely and extremely grateful for all the work that you've done to this point, and then the Herculean effort that you've gone to getting and restoring our emails. I do want to say that, you know, I was hearing on the internet and people saying, you know, we lost years worth of email. And I just want to say, you should not, just even for liability issues, you should not have emails for that long, right? So, you know, folks need to start deleting emails. And I need to start practicing what I preach to, and just going in and really kind of doing some maintenance on our servers. That is not a place for storage. You know, we should all kind of take better care of our emails. So that's all I want to say. Thank you so much, Jake, and your entire team. Turning it over to Ms. Presta.
I just want to say I realize that we've left one person out of all these thanks, and that's Giannis. I don't know Giannis's last name, but he was also with us a lot last week. So thank you.
Thank you. Unless there's anything else, okay, I'm going to move on to the next item on our agenda, item 8B1, which is the second progress report and first quarter grade update. I'm turning it over to Ms. Baca.
Good evening, President Salahuddin. Good evening, members of the board and student trustees. Tonight, I will be sharing a presentation on our fall progress report, second progress report. So back in October, I presented the data on the first progress report. So tonight, I'll be presenting on the second progress report for Oceana, Terra Nova, and Westmore, because they are in a semester system. And then I'm also going to be presenting the data for Jefferson High School's final grades, because they finished their first quarter grades. So there will be 2 sets of data that I will be presenting. So again, the objective tonight is to review the progress report grades and trends during the second progress period. And the topics covered will be the mark distribution for the 3 schools that I had mentioned, and then looking at it on a student level on which students receive at least 1 F. So that is repeated for Jefferson High School as well. Then I'll be sharing some findings and recommendations, and then discussions afterwards. So before I start, I just want to mention that for Oceana, Terra Nova, and Westmore, they have been operating under the traditional grading system of A, B, C, D, and F, with the traditional scale of 90% or above is an A, and 59% or below is an F. So this is the trends for all of the grades that students earned. So the blue bar is the grades from the first progress report, and the orange bar is the grades from the second progress report. And as you can see, the percentage of A's decreased from the first progress report to the second progress report. And however, the percentages of D's and F's increased by 2% during the second progress report. And then among these grades, the courses that had the highest number of F's, the top 5 courses are biology, English 9, chemistry, math course 1, and math course 2. So 3 of these courses are freshman core classes, and 2 of them are sophomore core classes. So now, given all of that grade distribution, I look at each student individually and look at the students that receive at least 1 F. So there were 2,706 students, and 858 of them receive at least 1 F, which is 32%. I look back in our grading reports in 1920, and back then for the second progress report, we had 23% of the students receive at least 1 F. So that's a 39% increase from last year to this year. And then I looked at the ethnic distribution of the students that receive at least 1 F. So in the past, I've looked at disproportionality data, and what I found out is in almost all of the reports that I have given you, we've been, our students that are Hispanic, African American, Pacific Islander has been disproportionate. So this time I wanted to compare the number of our students per ethnicity over the total number of students within that population. So for instance, for the 3 schools, we have 4 Native American students, and 4 of the 4 receive at least 1 F. For African American students, 74% of them receive at least 1 F, then followed by our Pacific Islanders, Hispanic Latinx, white, 2 or more, Filipino decline to state, and then our Asian students. I also look at different student groups. So for instance, our students learning English, in between all of these 3 schools, there are 321 students learning English, and 185 of them receive at least 1 F. For students with IEP in the mild to moderate program, 122 out of the 199 receive at least 1 F, which is 61%. And for students receiving free or reduced meal, it's 332 out of 2,706, which is 12%. Now for Jefferson High School, so Jefferson High School students took 3 classes for the first quarter, and they actually received their final grades. And because their quarter system, they had to figure out what type of grading system to adopt right away. So the school, under the leadership of Ms. Emmendorfer, decided to adopt school-wide our pandemic grading policy of A, B, C, pass, and no mark. And students that traditionally would receive a D or an F, but really tried very hard, but still struggled, receive a grade of a pass. Students that they could not get a hold of after multiple tries, emails, phone calls, text messages, for those students received a no mark. And the teachers also had to discuss with Ms. Emmendorfer to make sure that the students really do deserve a no mark. So with that, this is their grade distribution of A, B, C, D, and F. As you can see, there are no Ds and Fs. Instead, the students receive a grade of pass. And you will also notice that it's a similar pattern with the other students, except that instead of the 18% of pass, it was towards a D and F in the other school sites. As far as breaking it down for at least one student receiving a pass, so 431 out of the 1,326 students receive at least a grade of a pass. Again, this is very similar percentage to the other 3 schools. And this is the breakdown by ethnicity. And it is a similar pattern as well with our Native American at the top percentage of 100%, then followed by decline to state, Pacific Islander, African American, Hispanic, Latinx, white, Filipino, and Asian. And again, the patterns remain the same. And for students learning English, 54% of them receive at least a grade of a pass. 58% of them in the mild moderate program received a grade of pass, 58% of them. And then 15% of our students receiving free or reduced meal receive at least one grade of a pass. So some of the findings is that the percent of F grades increased from first to second quarter, and both at Jefferson and the other school site, about a third of the students either received the F or the pass. Also, our African American, Latinx, Native American, Pacific Islanders have highest F grades, and then over half of the students learning English and students with IEP also receive at least one grade of F. So some impacts of the failing grade is students' sense of hopelessness. So 3 out of the 5 courses that our students had failed during the second quarter is our 9th grade courses. So again, you know, they haven't even finished the whole entire semester and they are already failing. And this could potentially cause them high anxiety, stress, depression, and for some students, you know, seeing that 14% of the grade is just very discouraging to even try to get it to a pass, because it will be really hard to catch up mathematically. Also, students that fail have cannot access the higher level classes, which are the classes that are needed, and you learn a lot more of the skills needed in order to be successful after high school. And these students attend our credit recovery either in the summer and or after school, which means that some of them will probably not be able to participate in extracurricular activities or sports or other enrichment activities. Potential failure could also cost them their high school diploma and or college entrance to the UC-CSU. And finally, there's also financial costs to the credit recovery programs after school and during summer school as well. So last year with our credit recovery programs, we spent about $400,000. And what we could do is use some of that money to really strengthen our tier 1 support system within the classroom, in addition to the credit recovery program. But again, we can funnel the money into, you know, more of the support system within the classroom at that time. So given all of that, our board policy 5121 basically states that when an emergency situation occurs that prevents students from having access to the supports, resources needed in order to complete their work at home, students will not be negatively impacted or penalized. Therefore, when San Mateo County, the state of California, or the US government declares a state emergency, the board, with a recommendation from the superintendent or designee, may decide to assign the final grades of A, B, C, pass, or no mark. So like what Ms. Casey said, we're still operating under emergency situations, and our students have limited access to one of the most important resources they have, which is their teachers. The administration is recommending to reinstitute the pandemic grading policy for this year of ABC, pass, or no mark. At the same time, our school sites will continue to discuss at the site level the pitfalls of grading and how we can adjust and change our traditional policy that causes our students to be disproportionately impacted. We are hoping to move towards evidence-based grading or standards-based grading, but that is going to take years to do. And we really need to do a lot of discussions at the school site level and examine our grading practices that includes using grades as a punishment or reward, using the use of zeros, the use of averaging, and weighting of grades. So we have been discussing those practices at the school site level. And again, it will take some time to get the whole entire school moving towards standards-based grading. And finally, we would like to explore second semester to allow the California minimum state graduation requirement again for some of our students for the class of 2021. That.
Thank you. Opening it up for questions or comments. Ms. Garrett.
I just like to be first every time today. So. I feel really like, you know, I'm on the other side of this situation too, where even though, you know, my child is younger, but I just see so many like things that are happening for this to go this way. And, you know, I see that, you know, students are trying so hard, and I just feel like, you know, we just cannot set them up for failure, you know, especially during these times. And, you know, like for me to even have my daughter like actually get stuff done, like I have to sit there at all times a day just to make sure she's getting her work done. And, you know, we're talking about teenagers here, and, you know, at the time where they should be independent, but it's like we all still need guidance. And it's just so hard during this pandemic. So I just really feel for the students and the frustration. And if I was there, I would probably feel the same way in how they're feeling right now. So I just want to make that comment. So I totally understand. I heard what Trustee Hurst said earlier, and I definitely can relate to the frustration and the pain of the grading policy. So anyway, I just want to say that. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Lee.
Thank you. I concur with Trustee Garrett. And, you know, just sort of thinking about our last meeting a couple of weeks back when we had the presentation on mental health and wellness and trauma, and it makes sense that we would consider the pandemic grading policy. I mean, it's the most equitable solution in the current climate that we're in the absence of a better grading policy. You know, it's something that we've already done, and it makes sense to do it moving forward. I'm heartened actually by the response that from the email from Superintendent Presta earlier today about, you know, the fact that the different school sites are continuing to discuss the grading policies individually and how they're approaching it. So, you know, I would hope that, you know, at some point we can have a report out, you know, down the road to see, you know, what that progress looks like and what the discussions have been, considering we did have a discussion earlier in the school year about grading and saw some of the stats regarding that. So I'd like to see what kind of progress is occurring. So the recommendations to me make a lot of sense given the climate we're in. And again, you know, thinking about Ms. Casey's comment about the fact that we are still in a crisis, it makes sense that we would continue to approach grading in the same way. Thanks.
Thank you. Turning it over to Trustee Abu Zaria. Thank you for using the raise hand feature.
First off, I'd like to thank Ms. Baca for the presentation. I'm glad that grading is being looked at, especially in a time where like learning is so difficult. So I can't speak on behalf of all students just because I don't know what each class is like. But for me, 4 of my classes do have weighted grades. And I will say that in some of those classes, because the pace of the class is a lot slower due to distance learning and less is being covered, that also means that we're getting tests and quizzes less often, and those are usually what are weighted most in classes. So doing bad on one quiz or one test can have a significant impact on a person's grade. And I don't know if every teacher is giving extra credit. Like, I don't know. I know in some of my classes, I have opportunities to, you know, in my math class, for example, there's extra credit after a quiz or a test. And then in another one of my classes, tests are worth 60% of our grade. But I guess to counteract that, if you do not get a passing grade on the test, you can do test corrections to get up to a 75%. And also tests in that class are curved. So I guess there's that to accommodate. And then in another one of my classes, this percentage might seem a little weird, but tests and quizzes are worth 27%. And we've only had 2 quizzes so far. So not doing well on one of those quizzes can be like have a significant impact on your grade. And in that class, I believe if we were in person, we'd have tests roughly every week based on what I know from past students who were in the class. And so, and I also don't think there's extra credit in this class. So I think that like with that considered weighting, like seeing a significant impact to your grade from one quiz, test, assignment, whatever is like really discouraging to a lot of students. And I think it encourages students to take shortcuts or, cheat or whatever, just because we are online, like we have those resources are technically there for us, even if it's not an ethical thing to do. Some students might feel the need to do that just because they need to pass this class for credits or, like there's a lot of pressure on students to like pass classes for graduation and all that. And a lot of like this was talked about at the Student Advisory Council last night, how we just felt like one thing having a significant impact on our grade isn't fair. And like we also feel like it doesn't make sense to use a normal grading scale when there's nothing normal about this time and things are constantly changing, circumstances are constantly changing. So I do appreciate that the pass and no mark, the ABC pass and no mark thing is a recommendation. I mean, I hope it ends up actually being instituted across the school district on all school sites. And sorry for talking for so long, and that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Nope, that's why you're here. You're fine. Turning it over to Mr. Ochapinti.
Yes, thank you. No, Trustee Busaria he's right. I think there's a lot of things that our students experience that we don't hear about here unless we hear it from a student trustee or through one of us who has been in communication with one of them. And I think that's probably one of the most valuable things. The last time we addressed this, and Ms. Baca, when you brought it up, I was upset, and I'm still upset looking at the numbers and the disparities. I think we all are. I think it's fair to say that even teachers looking at this have, like we all do as teachers, a deep point of self-reflection, see where we are succeeding and where we are failing in terms of retaining our students, right? At the college level, we used to work around outreach and retention projects all the time to see how we could support students at the college level when they had jobs and other things in life happening, because you don't have as many supports when you leave high school. When we're seeing these circumstances play out, and even with students working and just having to do a lot more around the house, including go to school at home, we should be more, I think, mindful about those things. And I think the recommendations speak for that. So I would like to say that, I appreciate the report back. I know this has been addressed somewhat before, but I'll be interested to see where our students at Thornton are doing. And of course, with adult ed, just to see, though, of course, those are not as direct, they don't have a direct parallel necessarily to the kind of work that's being done at the comprehensive schools in terms of grading sometimes, but sometimes they do. And I think they would actually inform our practices maybe better in terms of the work and retaining students who are working through adverse circumstances and even just alternative settings, which is exactly what we're experiencing and have been since last spring. And so I would like to hear from students at Thornton, and of course, like our staff and our entire administration around that, in terms of how we can support everybody moving through this, because it was said best, these are not normal times, and so we shouldn't have the same normal measures. But I do have faith that the recommendations sound, like a solid follow-up, and I look forward to seeing what the rest of the semester has in play. And I have faith in our teachers and our staff to do that, and our admin. So thank you for that, and look forward to the next.
Thank you. Trustee Her?
Thank you, Ms. Hoff, for your presentation. Just to piggyback off of the previous comments, the tests take off so much of our grade, and of course, we can't expect all the teachers to finish grading all of our tests the next day, because that's impossible with all of their extra work. But I've had instances where some of my friends have told me, and I've had my grades come in just before the progress report. And it's really nerve-wracking to see such a dip in our grade and to have so little time to bring it back up. And I feel like the lack of motivation and then seeing our grade right before the progress report and trying to rush to bring our grade up is extremely stressful. And I think it has more of an effect than the actual work in the grades. So that is all I had to comment. But I'm really grateful for my teachers who work really hard to try and help the students in office hours and after class.
Thank you. Trustee Tejada? Trustee Tejada?
I know, I keep muting. Ms. Baca, thank you so much for putting together this presentation. It was good for us to go over this in our Student Advisory Council meeting last night because they went through it slide by slide and discussed it at length. And it was really good to hear their viewpoints because it did somewhat match what I am. My daughter's sitting right over here, but I'm going to talk about her anyway. But you know, she's doing well, but it's hard to stay motivated, and I see it, you know, and I can hear the teacher very engaging, but then I walk by and I see just no faces. And how hard is that for a teacher? But then, you know, one teacher actually told me that this class is so engaged. I mean, they use the chat feature mostly, but they're engaged. And he was very happy about that. But, and I've noticed a lot of the teachers will like reach out and, you know, try to, you know, help with, you know, they're noticing patterns in it when she turns in her homework. And so at Jefferson, because they're on the quarter system, there's no progress report. You're kind of, you got to stay on top of your grades. But if the teacher doesn't input it, it's on the student to figure out, to actually ask, where am I? You know? And like Ms. Herr was saying, how, you know, for a teacher to have to, you know, grade everything. I mean, it's hard enough not in a pandemic, you know, and so the recommendations, I fully support the recommendations. This is not a normal time. And, you know, I see the stress here in my household. And she also works. So, you know, it's the juggling, it's being motivated, it's being tired. You know, and while I'm working at home, I'm trying to, you know, be mom and make sure she eats something while she's in between her classes. So this is a tough time. And I just fully recommend, I fully support the recommendations.
Thank you. Ms. Casey?
Thank you. One thing that I thought was really interesting that you brought up, Nick, was Thornton, which I was going to mention. You know, being a person who worked at Thornton and really believe in the system there, you know, maybe we need to think about some of the systems that are there and branch those out. Similarly, I think a lot of students that would benefit from being at Thornton are, whatever reason, their families don't want them to go there and don't see the benefit. So I think that's something we need to really push out to a lot of the school sites. That was one thing. The second thing that I wanted to say was, personally, I believe that this is the right thing to do. And I know that there are people in the union, you know, some of my members are not going to be happy about this. And I just wanted to bring that up, and I wanted to be a voice for them. You know, there are a lot of departments at different sites that have been working on grades and been trying to figure out what to do and how to make it more equitable. And, you know, so there's been a lot of work on that within departments and within schools, and they haven't come to this conclusion, many of them. This is not the conclusion that they want to come to or that they want to do. Saying that, I keep saying to all of my members that we are in crisis mode and this is the time to do something different. So, and then the last thing is for maybe future, Ms. Baca, more data for you. I don't know if there's a relationship between the attendance data and the grade data. I'm, you know, just bringing that up. So that might be something that we can look at as well. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. So I just want to say first, just calling out Jefferson really quickly, that they don't give Ds, right? So their passes are being viewed as Fs, but some of those may be Ds. So their numbers may be a little bit inflated here. Just want to call that out. Because I don't know how do we track like which, because in the chart it says percent of students who have at least one pass, but then it says percent of students at least one F. So some of those may actually be Ds. So I just want to make sure that we're understanding that, so that we're not looking at Jeff through a lens that they don't deserve. The other piece is to just piggyback on what Ms. Casey said, that we are in a pandemic. And, you know, I don't like making decisions like these where we're kind of going against what educators have said this is what they want to do, because I'm not an educator, right? And that's not my wheelhouse. But at the same time, like, I think this is one of the important roles of a board member, is having to step up in certain times like these to make decisions that are going to affect outcomes of our community of students. And so I just want to tell, you know, all the teachers that are watching that are upset about this, that, you know, I understand why they're upset. I had a lot of conversations last school year, when we made a similar decision, and I understand their rationale. And I also want to say that I respect all the work that they've done to try to make changes to their grading systems in order to be accommodating. I know there's been a ton of work that's gone into all of this. But I mean, we are in a time, I don't even know how to describe what this year is. Like when my grandkids ask me what this year was like, I don't even know where to start. This is bananas, you know? So I can't imagine, and it's my adult brain trying to rationalize and understand this period of time that I'm in. I try to think about, how would I get through this period of time if I was a teenager? Trying to figure out all the chaos and turmoil that's happening in my world that looks like, you know, my future. Who knows what my future is going to be like? And at the same time, let's figure out this math problem. I mean, that's just a whole lot. And then we're making a lot of decisions that no one is happy with. You know, our decision to stay closed is affecting a lot of parents, and they are not happy with that decision either. But we made that decision because we wanted to do what's best for our teachers and staff. And I think we just have to make this similar decision in that same sort of vein. So I agree that I feel that this is the best decision for us right now. And I also want to say that no other municipality is being held to the standard that education is being held to during this pandemic. Other municipalities are allowed to fail left and right. And we get on the county call and all they get is congratulations for the work that they're doing. While at the same time, I'm personally running the testing site and had to pull teeth to get one that was here, but they are congratulated left and right. So I just don't want this to be seen as like we're failing or we are doing what we can do in the middle of chaos with the tools and resources that have been handed to us. So I'm very proud of the team and the work that we're doing. And I just want I don't want this decision while we're making this decision because we're afraid of the morale of the students, I don't want this decision to affect the morale of the teachers. So I just wanted to say that. Trustee Abuzea, did you want to say something else? I see your hand is up.
Yeah, I forgot to mention, because no student from Jefferson is here tonight, but at yesterday's advisory council meeting, someone mentioned that they received an F on their report card, progress report, and someone else from Jeff brought up that Ds were also showing up on students' report cards as I guess that was an error. And then one more thing is that I also want to echo that I'm grateful for the teachers because at least from what I've heard from other students and in my own experience, they've been understanding with late work and, opportunities to get missing work in and all that. And also want to make sure that this is the whole grading issue isn't necessarily, it's not anyone's fault. Teachers shouldn't feel any, that, oh, students failing is their fault. This is a challenging time for everyone. Students are going through tough times, teachers are going through tough times, everyone's going through a lot. So I just want to make sure no one's at fault here. But we do need to adapt and make some adjustments. And I appreciate that we are and we do have recommendations in place. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Presta.
Thank you. I remember to use my electronic hand. I wanted to say two things. So first off, thank you for bringing that up, Mustafa. The last night when we were in our meeting, the kids were talking about receiving some Ds and Fs on progress reports. And so I pushed on that this morning. I wasn't quite sure because Jefferson isn't using those markings, but that was actually that was thoughtful. That wasn't a mistake. They wanted to give what students would get as a letter grade to the students and families in a progress report, so they would just kind of have a better idea, but they won't be receiving those grades on report cards. So that was a clarification. And then I just want to kind of wrap it up by saying that while this is a discussion item, we are asking for guidance. It's not an action item in the sense that the board policy already says that this is possible, but I wanted to make sure that it sounds like from the board members that there's agreement to the recommendation to reinstitute the pandemic grading policy district-wide, but just wanted to circle back to make sure that I'm hearing you guys to say that.
Yep. Yes. Seems like everyone is nodding. Thumbs up. Yep. Awesome. Thank you. So yes, you have that direction. Thank you so much, Ms. Baca, for the presentation. It was very helpful. And now, unless we're all done here, all right, I'm going to move on to the next item, which is now our action items. And our first item on the agenda, item 9A for human resources, application for variable term waiver for Nieta Magpantai. And who is doing this? Okay, Ms. Presta.
Hi. So I realize I see you, Ms. Baswino. I put him on there, so I was going to talk. Is that okay? I don't want to steal the HR thunder. I wanted to just explain I don't need to speak on each of these. It's really the same situation for each of these teachers. They need to be put on the board agenda as an action item. The county office requires that in the state of California. But we are applying for variable term waivers for some of our teachers from the Philippines who, when coming to the United States and to California, have to fulfill some very California specific requirements in order to teach. And one of those is passing the CBEST. And so these teachers need to still pass certain sections. They can still remain in classrooms teaching. They're doing a good job, nothing about that. But we do need to officially apply for this variable term waiver so that they can remain teaching in the schools this year. So I do recommend that you approve these waivers.
Perfect, thank you. If it's okay, we can take them as a collective. If someone would like a motion for to approve the collective.
Move to approve items 9A1 through 9A5.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Fantastic. Moving on to item 9B, our education services, 9B1, return to school plan for spring 2020. Ms. Baca.
Hello again. Tonight I am presenting the return to school plan for small groups of students. Let me share my screen. So nothing much had changed from the last presentation. What we are still hoping is to allow for most of our students to return on campus as a small group of students when we are in the yellow tier in San Mateo and San Francisco County. However, after the conversation and the presentation by Ms. Ambrose and the last board meeting, what I had added was a couple of asterisks here to allow certain groups of students to return under special circumstances. So again, this is for our school and wellness counseling support, IEP assessments, and one-on-one tutoring. And this would be right here that the students might return under very special circumstances with the approval of a site principal, regardless of the tier. This came about because, as you know, we are in the purple state tier level, and I am not quite sure when we will be out of the purple level. And we have some students that need to be on campus for some of these services. So we are proposing to allow these individual students to be on campus, again, under the supervision of the principal and approval of the principal. The other change from the last 2 weeks plan is that for the learning pods to happen, I added a couple of additional groups, which are the students from Thornton High School and our SEEP program. So if our staff is willing to volunteer and be part of our learning pod, this learning pod would also be open for our Thornton students and SEEP. And with that, everything is pretty much the same, and asking for approval from the Board of Trustees.
Opening it up for any comments or questions. Trustee Lee?
Yeah, I know last time I was at the last meeting, I was sort of on the fence about that specific item when it came up with regards to the small learning pods, but for regardless of the tier. But after seeing, that there were actually a group of wellness counselors that had volunteered and are willing to do it, it makes sense to me that we should be able to do it in those circumstances that appear to be, for those higher risk students, certainly.
Thank you. Anyone else? Trustee Garrett?
Well, I just want to say that I don't think that anybody is taking any students coming back or any small groups coming back lightly. And to make that request is definitely a plead, out of the concern for the students that there is such a need that they do need to come back. So, and I feel it. And after watching the presentation as well, that Ms. Baca presented, I am definitely even more convinced. So I just want to make that comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Oltrapenti?
Yes, thank you. Thank you for bringing this back. Yeah, just to echo what everybody's saying, and note that it's good to have a plan in place. I think there's a lot of concern one way or the other. How schools will open up, when, and those are all, I think, the primary concerns. But that said, just as a matter of, logistics and having an understanding what school could look like as we begin to get through, whatever the next stage of COVID is, being a purple tier or whatever, the next few months will bring. I'm glad that we can see it on paper. We have that for discussion to better understand what people could be looking forward to in terms of the options they have, of course, and knowing that we have a plan in place when it is safe to return. So thank you very much for this. And of course, to everybody in the district who's been a part of that.
Thank you. Well, no. So again, I am grateful that we're bringing this back to approve, and that we are considering talking about, again, as Trustee Garrett said, we don't take lightly talking about having students on campus in purple. But at the same time, I'm really nervous about mental health and safety of some of our students who don't have any place to escape to, and may be stuck in their homes and not knowing the condition or the surrounding of their homes. And I know when I was in high school, my home life was really hard and challenging. I had two parents that had drug issues. Being at home was hard. And so I loved being at school, and I actually got a job so that I didn't have to be at home as little as possible. So I don't know if I was like a teenager during this period, how well I would be having to be in the home with, my father and my stepmother who were really abusive, especially when they were using drugs. So, and we know that during the pandemic, drug use, abuse, all these things have gone up dramatically. So just to be able to have a harbor for some of our students to have some respite, even if we're in purple, I think is just really powerful and impactful. And I'm very grateful for everyone who stepped up to volunteer, and any site principal that's looking to do this. Thank you. I understand, like, that's just a huge risk, taking risks to do this. And I'm eternally grateful for that. So unless there's anything else. All right. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Perfect. Moving on to future agenda items. Anything for consideration? Oh, Mr. Oltrapenti.
Yeah, I just want to raise the consideration for putting ethnic studies on the agenda again. We did discuss it briefly at our board retreat, but we didn't get to, I think, the level where we would have generated any kind of update or something where maybe even the rest of the district would have a say in maybe commenting on it, or even just, an update around the state and where we are in terms of curriculum development and where that's going. And so I would like to see it sometime on the agenda in the next year. We have a lot on our plate, obviously. That's not going to change anytime soon. So I was thinking of suggesting it for January or February. If January is too soon, then of course February or March at the least. But yeah, to put ethnic studies on the agenda sometime soon.
Okay, thank you.
I think Ms. Baca said last meeting that Ms. Robinson was bringing an update on ethnic studies curriculum in January.
January 19th.
January. Yep, that's why I said okay. Okay.
Okay, so then that is agendized for the 19th?
We
Yes.
haven't, no,
Oh, well.
because we haven't created the agenda
Yeah,
yet.
we haven't,
But that's why
Let's plan for
we're okay. So yeah, the recommendation was heard at the last meeting. We did talk about it a little bit during our work study, and Ms. Robinson's preparing to come at some point in January. We haven't, we don't create the agenda for any meeting until, the week before the meeting, but it is on the to-dos for the agenda. Anything? Oh, all right. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second, I guess no one wants to adjourn.
I know, right? We all just want to stay together.
That was the longest pause ever.
All those in favor say aye.
Hi.
Aye. All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a good night.
Have a good
night.
Bye.
Thank you. Good night.
Night.